In this lesson, we'll talk about adding surface noise to our model. So there may be times when we want to come in and start to add a little bit more high frequency detail across the model. We may not want to paint it, maybe we just want to have the ability to add some bumpiness to a piece of brick or something like that very, very quickly. In this case, we'll use our little creature. You can see I've just finished him out a little bit more with the sculpting techniques that we talked about. Raised his head up a little bit, made his mouth a little bit bigger, and just generally added a little bit more detail. So there is an option here in our tool palette. If we come down to our surface subpalette, right between preview and deformation, we open that up, we have the ability to add some high frequency noise to the skin. So we turn on noise, just activate it. You can see this sort of general bumpiness all across the surface. Now that isn't actually in the mesh, it's actually being generated here by our noise. So I can turn that on and off. I can also go in and edit the noise. So if I hit edit, you'll see that this window comes up. Let me actually pull my interface down a little bit so it will allow us to kind of see more of that screen. Okay, so we have a preview window here, which we can move around in just as we would in our canvas. And then up here on the top right, we have the ability to change the scale of the noise. So if we make it larger, you can see how those bumps get a little bit larger, or we can go back smaller. We can also change the strength. So here we have a negative strength, so it's pushing it in if we want to get something really intense. Okay, we can also drive things with masks if we want to drive the strength, magnification. So let's go ahead and take this up to something that looks a little bit better. We can also change the curve of this. So let me bring the scale up. And so you can start to see, you get a different kind of a texture where we've got more of a clipping down at the bottom, or we can turn it kind of like this, where we get some clipping at the top. And so you can tweak this curve to get different looks for your noise. Okay, if you want to use the noise plugin, check that out. There's a lot of kind of custom noise patterns that you can use in there, but we're not going to touch on that at this time. So let's go ahead and I'll take the strength down a little bit. And let's take the scale down a little bit as well. Okay, and you can take, if you want to do the opposite effect, you can just take your strength into the positive. You can see that in combination with your curve will create different effects. So we'll set this to something like that. When we're ready, we can say OK. And now that noise has been added to our model. Now if I come in here and start to mask off areas, you can see that anywhere inside the mask is not getting any of that noise. So if I want to, I can come in and say, you know what, I don't want the noise to be in the mouth, so I'm going to mask off the inside of the mouth because it doesn't make sense for that bumpy skin texture to be inside there. Okay, and so we can come in and mask this area off so that it won't get any of that bumpiness. Same thing up in here. Okay, and we can do the same thing down here. If we don't want it to be as bumpy down here, we can sort of mask off this area. And again, this is still being kind of procedurally generated, so at any time I can come in and turn off that noise and it's not there anymore. I don't want it to be on the lips, let's say, so come in and kind of just mask out the lips, and just anywhere that you don't want this bumpiness to happen. All right, and I think overall I also want to make this a little bit smaller. So I'll take the scale down a little bit, say OK to that. So once we're happy with the noise, at this point you could leave the noise on and just have it sitting there on your mesh and you can see it. But if you want to actually bake it down into the surface and into the geometry, you want to hit apply to mesh. And when you hit apply to mesh, it's going to have you're going to need to have a high enough resolution for it to get the bumpiness that you've chosen. If you don't, it's going to try to get that bumpiness, but it may not look exactly the same. Also, it tends to kind of overshoot the value a little bit, so it can kind of expand a little bit once you apply it. So let's go ahead and say apply to mesh. And now you can see that that's applied that. The noise is off, but we still see the noise here. If you want to knock it down a little bit, you can get your smooth, come in here, and I would take the intensity way down, and then you could just knock that back just a little bit. But that noise function is a great way to really quickly add some high frequency detail to your models. Think about stones or bricks or walls, things that need to have that sort of noise, concrete roads, things like that. You just pop that noise on there and then apply it to your mesh, and it'll go ahead and bake that in, and you don't have to go through and paint all of this noise. It just adds it all across the surface. And you can mask off areas that you don't want that noise to be applied to. Okay, so that's a look at surface noise. You also have the ability to add noise to brushes and use noise brushes to add the noise also. So it's going to be, this functionality is going to be located in different places across the application. Also, if you want a custom noise, you can go into this light box under noise, and there's just some custom noise settings here that you can work from. There's kind of a hex pattern and a cracked look here, so check those out as well. So the next thing that we will talk about is some more advanced poly painting. So we'll go in and paint this guy, and then paint up the base as well before moving on to using Spotlight. So we'll go ahead and do that next.